revenue is always going to go up and down. Profits are going to go up and down. Your values cannot go up and down.
There you go.
That's
there you go.
Your ship's in the water facing a direction.
Right.
The storms are going to come and go in terms of revenue and profit. But you have to keep your eye on, stay the course, as they say, to weather the storms and just realize that, it's the classic journey versus the destination.
Exactly.
If we're not having fun, we're doing it wrong.
Hey there, welcome to Entrepreneurs with Heart. I'm Adria.
And I'm Sydney, and we're here to help you build a rock-solid business so that you can kiss that 9-to-5 goodbye and turn your side hustle into your dream job.
So, if you're looking for down-to-earth advice from someone who's actually grown a business from scratch to 7 figures, you're in the right place.
We got the scoop on everything from growing your online presence, nailing email marketing, and even how to build your team without losing your mind.
Right? Plus, we'll dive into content marketing, website hacks, social media tricks, getting more traffic, staying productive, basically everything you need to know to grow your business without going back to school.
So, if you're ready to take the leap and make your side hustle your full-time gig, hit that follow button and let's get this journey started.
Hey, you guys, we're happy to be here with my good friend, Brandon Pelissera. I will say, so Sydney, here's what I wanted to say before the podcast. You remember when we interviewed Eric?
Yes.
And after we interviewed, Eric's a good friend of mine also. After we interviewed Eric, we were like, we need to make this, this conversation can go on forever. We need to make this a regular thing. I got that feeling just from reading Brandon's intake form. There are so many things I want to talk to you about, so I am excited. First of all, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and let's just get into it because I'm excited.
Great. So, most importantly, married almost 30 years. Equally important, 2 amazing daughters, 21 and 19, who are living the best versions of themselves. And what I do for work is very lifestyle driven. Very intentional about having fun along the way versus waiting until retirement to start living and traveling. So I balance technology with the environment and people who share similar passion and purpose.
My first question, there were so many in your form. You mentioned something about, especially in this point in your life, that your travel is very, how do you put it? It's intentional.
And for impact.
Right, impact. Yes. You said impact travel. So what does that mean?
So we just had the Olympic opening games this past weekend, and much like a lot of people watching with friends, there were several countries or just areas of the map that we know nothing about. It's the United States. It doesn't make news. It's not on the front cover of travel magazines. And you realize when you get to some of these places that don't have as much, publicity, good or bad, that there's local impact to be done. So we went to Nepal a couple of years ago through a tour group that really is focused on travel for good. And that kind of, planted the seed of when we're out in other places, besides spending money and taking lots of pictures, what can we do as part of that? So we were able to actually go and see survivors of different atrocities and be part of that solution. Handmade, artisan, craft, things that you're not going to get online. Locally, things like that. Remembering history that sometimes doesn't, get as much news and noise and announcements. So, and then seeing the environment for what it really is. There's mountains that aren't as big as or things like that. So just being intentional in terms of the impact you can make financially, just learning a few local words, always please and thank you, but if you can do more than that, it goes a long way. And at a minimum, bringing your smile with you in terms of your suitcase. You can always pack kindness.
Yeah.
You can always pack kindness. It's so great. I'm writing it down. How did you get to be who you are? I know a lot of people, and there are some people that I know. You remind me of someone. There is no one else that reminds me of you, Brandon. You are a snowflake. You are a snowflake. How did you, I want to know, and you were asking this question too, how did you become to care so much about the environment and sustainability, but being so kind, your love of women and your respect of women, where did all this come from?
So it started early. My mom was one of 11 children.
Oh, wow.
8 girls.
Oh, wow.
So in terms of the feminine, affinity, it became very immediate and early. And 11 children, you're doing more than one job.
Yeah.
Before the gig economy was such a thing, my grandfather was a coal miner. He was a farmer. He did junkyards and recycling of car parts. My grandmother kept the house going and sewing and making and baking and everything. Etsy now. She would have been a major whatever influencer had she had the means 50 plus years ago. So, and I have the benefit of longevity. We always talk about the winner's bias in business, right? It's the history of the winners that we learn from. So I had the privilege of keeping grandparents into my late 40s. So that's just a lot of wisdom that you just cannot download or stream these days.
Yeah.
So in terms of the environment sustainability, I was always in some form of a summer camp. And my mom was able to get us into one that was more of a nature environmental camp. And as it turned out at that time, and unbeknownst to me, I was quite young, elementary school, I was in camp with our city's mayor.
Okay.
So got a little bit of extra attention, didn't appreciate that as a kid of like surveillance. But it quickly became something meaningful to me. My grandfather would take us out to the mountains and Sunday drives and fishing and all those things. And it just lights me up. When I go to new places in terms of travel, it's part of where we go in terms of beaches and mountains and things that are kind of more special and unique and maybe don't have access to back home. So yeah, I mean, summer-wise, it was always kind of exploring and plenty of leeches, plenty of hooks up the nose, broken, arms and cuts and scraps.
That's good stuff, right?
Making, trying to be Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn.
Yes.
Realizing that wooden pallets don't float.
Yes. If you know, you know.
But, Frankenstein making bikes out of parts and, seeing I could make them road world. It was just a good way to kind of, see things, especially when, there's no internet. You're not, watching as much in terms of screen time. So you just created your adventures and fun.
Right. Maybe this is why we connect so much, because I had a similar childhood fishing with my dad. Although I have a sibling, I'm 4 years older than him, and he doesn't really care for nature like I do. I don't know how this happened, but even my aunt, whenever she comes to visit me, she says, "Adria, you always have a house around trees," and this is how I grew up. I grew up with trails and snails and slugs, and I named them all. Butterflies, I know all the species, right? I would bring them home and label them, and you're right, it's just a different way of growing up, and that it's just that great appreciation of family and nature.
So I had a little bit of an advantage of, town and country. I would go for summers with my grandparents. It would definitely more rural and lived in a city during elementary school and discovered public libraries. And if I were to just leave one sound snippet, it's like you should love on your public library. I think it's one of the best things that you have access to. And I think they're doing a lot of great work continuous, even with all the streaming and everything digital. So I did checker tournaments and made friends and got my library card. It felt special, I can be seen. And my grandfather always had a set of encyclopedias now. We had a lot of curiosity, just learning was encouraged. Just asking questions and staying curious was really important to us. As an adult, I became a more avid reader, and with the library being so robust, one of the plugs I'll share for, things I like in terms of products and services to promote is interlibrary loans. What very few people know, and I don't know how, it is across the country, but here in our slice of heaven, you can put out for a book if you don't have it in your community, you can get it outside of your community. So I've literally had books from Fort Lauderdale, Florida delivered to our backyard. A lot of the universities will make their libraries accessible to us as non-students or alumni. So I just think that's a great way to explore life, learn, and be your own advocate, for whatever those causes or concerns you have.
Yeah, that's awesome. And there is something, we haven't gone to a library in a while.
You haven't gone to a library.
When have you gone?
It's been a couple of months.
Okay.
I've only some of my friends who are alumni at SCAD we have, like you said, we have access to the SCAD library.
Yeah.
So we will just work in there.
Yeah.
We'll pick up a book.
It's good times, right?
It's a good time. Plus the librarians are always so passionate about if you just ask them any kind of question of I want a book on this.
Right.
There's always something. But yeah, the public library though, I haven't been in there for a little while.
Yeah.
But they have tons of resources.
So many resources that are often overlooked.
Yeah.
That's a really good point.
Absolutely.
Something else that you were talking about in your form was so much stuff, but let's talk about the startups and startovers and your passion for those.
So a good friend of mine, his metric for success as we go from success to significance, they call it halftime for those who reach that golden era. You start thinking about what impact you're making, and legacy. And for this particular cohort of mine, he really, is intentional about taking people as employees and working for others to six figures. So for him, getting to people $100,000 of annual income, earned income more is his measure of success. In terms of the more that number goes up, the better satisfied he feels that he's paying it forward. For myself, I've been excited as a metric of being intentional about startups. I think entrepreneurship is something everybody should learn, no matter where they go to school or bypass school and self-teach. It's, I think, at least for the United States, one of the best places that you can actually pursue that dream through entrepreneurship. So I really, put my money where my mouth is and get involved with people who want that for themselves and their families. So I'm always family first in terms of people that want to do better for themselves and their families, and then beyond that, the community and the greater good. So I have, a little bit of an antenna or GPS for people who share that vision. And it's been fun. But I also recognize there's a lot of great companies in transition that could be succession planning, grandparents, parents, the children, your grandchildren, and using that, family, lots of family businesses in the United States. In Georgia, we're a very large small business state. So you recognize that what our grandparents did in commerce and business isn't the same today for us, for grandparents and so forth, in your case, Sydney. So you look at the digital tools that enable us to really define what we want, eliminate what we don't want, and that's not just at home in terms of competing for family time and community time and just personal time in terms of the Sabbath, but also, so defining what you want, eliminating what you don't want is kind of the first step of just, a start over or startup. Then how do you leverage automation? How do you have that 25th hour, that 8th day in a week, that 13th month? That gets exciting for me. And then the final part, this is, I think, the sweet spot that I never envisioned, or my grandfather or grandparents would have thought about just in terms of modern technology, is how do you liberate where you can do it anywhere? So we're here recording today, but we could easily be in your other favorite places in the world. Or mine. Or both of ours. So where are we going next? But really, as we think about how we can pack up our lives fairly quickly in terms of a cell phone and a laptop and a couple of cables, we can pretty much do this type of work anywhere. And as I think about impact travel, that excites me. And my wife just recently changed out her passport. It's expiring. We looked at the last 10 years and we had 14 international trips.
Wow.
And when you think about a couple of years hiatus during COVID, that's a lot. And it gets us, if we think if we can do that with the world shut down, what can we do without a whole shutdown?
Right.
But it's almost like a diary, like your receipts and all the different things, your taxes. It's a story. Where do you spend your time? Where do you spend your money? So we're very, much looking forward ahead. And part of it for me when I do travel is how do I get engaged around companies that are either starting up and going into a new market, starting over, where it's like they just don't know how the digital world works, how maybe government or kind of, if they're in commercial or consumer facing, B2B goes to B2C, all of those opportunities to just go into a new market. Like EcoSlate goes into wholesale internationally and local, and that's exciting. And then we have these opportunities to then work in places with people and for different products. So what are the things that we're making today is a product or service that has another goes with it, the peanut butter to the jelly. So I always like to find those. And one of the ideas I'm teasing out right now is this concept of purpose and expenses. Every day we have an expense that our business can't run without. Utilities, technology, etc. Imagine you got to say, I want to actually work with this company because their mission, vision, values align with mine. They're giving back and doing local good. So as I look at kind of startups and startovers, we're in an interesting time going into the year 2030 is going to be the end of the baby boomers bubble. Saying that 3 times will be painful. But as we look at the last of the boomers reaching retirement age, that means there's a lot more companies in transition from succession planning and things like that. and what brought them in the business whenever they founded it before, technology and the internet will not keep them in the same business. The newspaper industry, journalism has changed. Just this one, cars are now computers with wheels.
Right.
So as we kind of embrace the unknown going forward, you have to do that with, again, some people who really, I think, are more disciplined around how much of it's noise and how much of it's real. And I say that because we can have every app, every API, every plugin, and still not sell product or services.
Yeah.
So you have to kind of look at that, minimum viable product or service and decide, and then the other part is enough. There's a reason, season, or lifetime. What are we doing this for? Is it just to get the kids through college? As an example, is it to reach quick retirement, have a second home, have a nice vacation once a year? What is it that we're making money towards? So this concept of enough is always something I like to at least engage people with, just so I know what we're playing, like, how do we play the game? How do we win? How do we keep score? Are we having fun?
Right.
And if we don't have those, basic in place, then it's kind of difficult to really play together, work together, win together. So, yeah, but it's been fun at this stage of my career with kids in transition from college to have a little bit more time to, peek around the bend and see some new different things.
Yeah. What you got?
Well, this was more associated with like your travels and stuff like that. But when was the first time that you traveled to somewhere that had that sort of impact that made you want to like keep traveling?
So when we looked at our passports very recently, we had been to Greece 8 times. So if I just do math, it's like clearly something there. And the first time in 2018 when my wife went, it was very much in response to the Syrian refugee crisis. And as we look 8 years later, or 6 to 8 years later, I guess now, that is constantly moving around the world, but certain parts of the world more than others, just in terms of news and conflict that has been, I guess, unresolved. So we've been, they were almost going to be taken out of the EU not that long ago. So there was Brexit where Britain left. Brexit was where they were going to ask Greece to leave because of them not being. So kind of seeing what that looks like firsthand, is different than reading about it or hearing about it. And each time you go, you learn something new and different. There's amazing history that I think we can, benefit from, archaeology, just what they're doing from sustainability. They're doing some very interesting things because they have to, not because it's sexy or because it sells product or because there's an incentive in terms of, press release publicity. So it's been really beautiful to see people really living off the land and pretty much a zero waste mentality in terms of time and their hospitality towards animals is unprecedented. I've never seen more stray dogs live so well. And as we look at our society, just, people who are not, unhoused, and it's very, hard to, realize that animals in other countries have better quality of life than humans in our backyard.
Right.
So that's, for me, as I kind of think about where we can make, positive strides is, again, some people have different viewpoints of what the United States is, whatever their source of information is. And you want to, not dispel that, just let them know, like, we're 330 million people that all care differently, all bring kindness in different size bags.
Yeah.
I try to check that carry-on and make sure it's full. So, yeah. But for me, like I said, travel, we're going to be in Thailand later this year.
Nice.
And that's been a place of interest for some time. So there's parts of the world for sure that we'll spend more time with. There's languages that are being brought back. I think that's important in terms of first Gaelic is being taught in Ireland, and that's exciting and important for my wife who's in linguistics. So you think about basic things like just being able to share something with your ancestors. That's pretty powerful. That the language doesn't die with them as we think about just a lot of traditions being oral only. It's not written. We're not here to kind of archive it in those encyclopedias I grew up with.
Yes. So it seems like your business has like not just a lot of planning behind it, but a lot of passion and heart and purpose behind it. And I'm wondering, like, do you feel like having that passion, having that love for what you do, that love for travel, sustainability, connection, is important for every business, not maybe those top 3, but just having something that you're passionate about and having some type of vision, some type of thing that you're doing for other people. Do you think that's important for a successful business?
Absolutely. So I acquired the business right before COVID. Great time to be a new business owner. And it was just in time, just timing wise, for our company to have their 30th anniversary. So I was looking at what we were doing in 1991 before I joined and what was available then. just in terms of the opportunity and the playing field. What made sense to us in terms of these principles of why we do business in terms of business for good versus money and a difference or a profit is that there's a process which I think you're in the middle of becoming a certified benefits corporation or a B corporation. Very rigorous, very but it really helps you look at the impacts you're making across many different touch points. And that was a very well worth exercise to really kind of look and just ask the different stakeholders, shareholders, are we walking the walk? Are we talking the talk? And you get that 360 feedback. It's not always positive and glowing, but you want to know where you can improve and be a better version of yourself. What we're in now, as we speak, is becoming a certified 1% for the planet. And what that means is 1% of our profits, revenue, will go into a organization that's vetted by a third party that is doing some good. And it's not, you see planet, people are part of the planet. So we're very excited around healthcare, just in terms of, especially rural, healthcare and access just here in our state. We care very much around education and women's education primarily. There's a very lopsided ratio of uneducated, illiterate in the world that are disproportionately more female. So as we kind of look at travel, or back to that early part, where do we go where there is a shortage or void in just local literacy without getting into a second language? But the 1% we feel hopefully will just be one more thing that kind of makes us look at our business more, critically, and say, this 1%, we just can't throw it away. We're giving this away. We're making a difference with this, and if we're not intentional, we could lose it by not, just being as careful or fun.
Yeah, and I'm going to chime in on that too. So even before we were in the process of becoming a B Corp, which has been amazing, like you're saying, and so being a B Corp, we have a whole episode on that because it does make you look at your company much differently and to see if you are, really practicing what you preach and all that. But I find that when you, it is a red flag to me when I approach a company that doesn't have a clear mission statement. They don't know what their values are because what are you really working for? And to me, it's a lot more stressful to me. Like when we weren't as locked into our values, it would then by default, in my opinion, you can tell what you think, but by default, then you're just about profit and revenue and you don't have control over those things as much, right? But to me, when even if my revenue is up or down, I know here's what I stand for, here's what I'm working towards, and I have control over that. And that can fuel my fire and not get me depressed and feel like I'm not making progress. I can always make some sort of progress towards my values, even when I can't control how revenue and profit are going to shake out during COVID, but I can control how I'm going to donate to the homeless and how I'm going to support my sustainability efforts. So that's how I look at it.
Yeah, so there's a concept called your investment policy statement. And it's like, I'm going to do this if I have $1. If I'm going to do this if I have $10.
Yeah.
Do this when I'm 10 years old, and do this when I'm 100 years old. Just using analogies. We oftentimes will do that from an investment, from a financial, but we look at those non-financial things in terms of give back. And yes, time is talent and treasures. It's not just the dollar that's making an impact.
In
terms of travel, just being there and being kind.
Yes.
I mean, unfortunately, doesn't that can be enough for some people in a day.
Yes.
Having a tough time. So as I think about, revenue is always going to go up and down, profits going to go up and down, your values cannot go up and down.
There you go. There you go.
Your ship's in the water facing a direction.
Right.
The storms are going to come and go in terms of revenue and profit, but you have to keep your eye on, stay the course, as they say, to weather the storms and just realize that, it's the classic journey versus the destination.
Exactly.
If we're not having fun, we're doing it wrong. If we're not making a difference,
yes,
we could be doing it better.
Yeah.
But you have to take care of yourself before you can, charity starts at home.
Right.
So I'm a big believer and advocate for being debt free. I know there's necessary debt and there's healthy debt and unhealthy debt, and just like carbs and calories. But I really, it's hard to help others if you're not taking care of yourself. And that's not just yourself in terms of the business owner or owners, or it's more, but it's also people that are keeping the business back, the boat in the water, keeping things afloat. So yeah, it's funny. One idea that I'm kind of thinking about right now through some outside advisory is digital workers and employees. So we can't do it all. We're all going to get sick.
Mm-hmm.
COVID happened to all of us in some capacity in terms of like mortality and just. But the technology is always changing. We're now in a world of AI and machine learning, and how do you graft that with what you have? Because it's from an equity perspective, our team works 4 days a week. We're shut down the week between Christmas and New Year, no matter what your beliefs are. That's just like, we just think that a lot of people, as we looked at the data, spend most of their time at the end of the year to be with family.
Yeah.
And we don't want 51 weeks out of a year to go by if you're not feeling great or your family's not has needs to wait until the end of the year.
Right. To take the time. Yeah.
So I think time, as a currency, I'd rather pay you more money for less time in order to have a better, quality of life now. When I talk about not waiting from a deferred living until you're older to travel and make a difference, impact, whatever that might be, it's not for the owner, it's for the person who starts next week. So I really want to be, kind of on the same page, and that could be the contractor, the supplier, it could be the customer. Where are our values in agreement? Because if we're not in agreement, then long term it's probably not going to be a healthy relationship or sustainable.
Right.
So those are, some things. And then niching down. We can't be all things to all people. Again, I've had some great people more recently in the last 6 months or so really, challenge me, like, am I overextending myself from a reach? As they say, is the juice worth the squeeze?
Yeah. Yeah.
So right now I have to be selective, because you just can't, you can't do it all as a group, not you as a person. And that's where I think digital workers come in, where you can, have some better utilization of technology that complements what we just can't do when we're not, 24/7, 365 as people.
So many things. Okay, let's talk about this first of all. So, at your company, are you the founder of your company?
I'm not. I'm third generation. So started in 91. In fact,
Okay.
interesting story. I just met with the co-founder last week, who's 97.
Wow.
And again, as I learned a lot from my grandparents, I've learned a lot from, intelligent, people who have stayed in the game longer, just not just math, but also just the impact. I mean, this is a gentleman who didn't retire until he was almost 80.
Wow.
And he retired just because it just made sense.
Yeah, because I'm saying,
Look at
He's
this.
like, all right, I've had enough.
Yeah.
So we went from, original, founder, 91, actually two, and then, transition in around 2006. And then I was the third, end of 2019.
Okay. So my question is this. So when you got, and I want you to walk me through this, because you've implemented a lot of change at your company as far as HR policies, medical stuff, leave, all these sorts of things. And you have several stakeholders, I'm imagining, as well. How did everyone feel when I'm imagining you proposed these changes? Walk me through how this happened, because you do so much as far as giving back, and it takes a lot of money to support the things that you are supporting. How was that received?
So two things. One, there was a void just within like corporate culture. And I say corporate, small business culture. And it was around your total compensation.
Okay.
A lot of people, hourly salary, doesn't matter how you get paid. You just look at your check and you look at the end of the year with your W-2 and you think that's how much I made. And it's a much bigger number than that. Benefits are not free. Benefits are not cheap. Benefits do not go down in value year over year. They go or cost. So as I try to educate people at a minimum, this is what you're getting already without there being a different conversation. And I didn't know that before buying the business.
Okay.
It was a resource we had. We just, didn't use it internally. So step one is, what do we have? And then where's their equity or differences? And a lot of times we fall into the tenure trap. Somebody's been here 10 years, somebody's been here 10 months. And on paper, 10 years is more valuable than 10 months. And that's not, those are the inputs. The outputs is, what are you getting done?
Yeah.
Because if the person at 10 months is doing more in terms of, we can all see that, easier to work with, customers love him or her, all that good stuff, then it really doesn't matter how long you've been doing it. So there were some things that just were, I guess, more just, we've always done it that way.
Yeah.
Or my inertia.
Yeah.
Like, it's not broken, let's not fix it.
Yeah.
So we realized with people having more tenure that they would always get first priority on time off. And that didn't feel right to me. you know, because your time off is your time off. Like your days are your days that are important to you as a family and as an individual. So that was one piece and I did this with the Georgia, and this would be a great plug, Georgia Mentor Protege Program.
Okay.
And it basically pairs small businesses like ours with much, much bigger companies here in Georgia.
And it's called what again?
The Georgia Mentor Protege Connection, I think.
Okay.
So I'll get you the link.
Yeah.
But it really keeps us in the game. So we did a 360 panoramic assessment. It took me about 6 hours. It wasn't like just a couple of quick questions. And it wasn't where you want the business to be, it's where you are. And sadly, just in terms of where we were at the time, and I've now taken it twice, personnel was very low.
Yeah.
So I then leaned in, figured out resources who can help with that. I started doing my own independent research just to kind of at least come up to speed. It's not a background I have. I take classes, I did do certification workshops. Never had that as a position, job, or title. But with a small business, you pretty much wear every hat at some point.
Yeah.
If you stay long enough.
Yes.
And after 25 years, I think I've worn them all and included a few that didn't exist. So as I think about, you know, kind of what I would want for my own family in terms of like, that's what I'm looking at. Because whether it's you or me, we're all connected to somebody. None of us are islands. We're not this one person that doesn't have connection, ties to someone else. So when you pay 100% medical, you can't go greater than that. So when we look at year over year, there's not a question about like your worth, your value, and what we can do in terms of like money on the table. Like, hey, you know, there's not this truing up. 4 days we wanted to do, not because of COVID. We just know that you can't fit all of life Monday through Friday, and a lot of doctors' offices.
I have so many notes. This is so great.
Cannot, you know, accommodate all of your needs.
Yeah.
So just that time, and I think mental health before it became a larger topic during the pandemic and a lot of isolation and separation, I think is only more beneficial these days.
Where you're at in your company, it just seems like you're a leader, but did you always feel like you were a leader? Or do you feel like you were born to lead, or did you have like a, or was it just something that you were just like, I'm just gonna try it out, or did you have a mentor, or like how did this happen?
All of the above. yes, and more yes. First things first, my mom gave me an early advantage prenatal by reading a lot of like power of positive thinking and you know those types of. So there was a lot of like programming, downloading, osmosis going on with mama, you know, literally. But coming out, I just heard this very recently in the last few days that there is quote unquote firstborn premium. And basically you get all mama and daddy or whoever that is in the family, whoever that is a source of love, you get all of it. You get 100% when you're the first. When you're second, third, I think about my youngest aunt who was the 11th. Hard to get 100% and it's a 10 ahead.
Yeah.
So I do think, Sydney, that some of it is just kind of where you are in terms of like family in the beginning. Like those early years, we all talk about Head Start, these Head Start programs, Kickstart for businesses. It's the same Kickstart for leadership as a youth. But I did have that opportunity, and again, I was just surrounded by a lot of aunts and uncles and grandparents who kind of raised me up in more than one way, not just physically, but But yeah, leadership. I quickly realized I'm more of a not boss versus follower, but I'm pretty clear of like what I want, what I will and won't tolerate. And I mean, whether I'm the owner or not the owner, it's a formality in leadership.
Right.
I've never treated like, well, that's not mine. Like a rental car, I don't just, like it's someone else's vehicle that I'm just borrowing for a little bit. So as I think about leadership, and also in the home, we all have to, pick and choose what we're going to be doing. As they say, we can't all feed the dog. So the dog either never gets fed or gets like fed 10 times. It's like grossly overweight in a week. So we have to have some, some lines of, what you and I do if we're working together, whatever that is. But for me, leadership kind of came natural. It's been nurtured and mentored. I've had great college, professors that kind of saw some things in me that I didn't see in myself and kind of, steered me in that direction. One of my former podcasts entitled Lead Like You Give a Damn. And the other one was Chat with Leaders. So, but I was asked about, something similar. And I wasn't always this way in terms of, fully 360, but call it, 100%. I was curious, early in my marriage about, taking a job overseas and realize during the interview when you're not looking at, what's next in terms of, yes, I'm current with where we are today, but in this world of leadership, just leadership, not even technology, where are we going? When I was looking, when I bought the company by great person, I was very low as a score among the different business aspects. What are the things that will make an immediate impact? Financially, I'm not flush. So what are the things I can do? Time is still, cheaper than money in terms of an extra day off versus an extra 10,000 or whatever the numbers are. So, so I've had moments, of recalibration. It's not, what is it? There's no straight line in leadership. There's always some detours and, dead ends.
Yeah.
You gotta, eventually, course correct and move on and learn from lessons past and try not to repeat the ones that are hurtful to you or others, financially, etc. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to know, and I guess it's a question for both of you guys, because both of you are like CEOs of businesses. How does it feel to have the weight of everybody's life on your shoulders?
Oh my God.
And does it ever stress you guys out? Do you ever feel imposter syndrome almost for, making these big decisions that will inherently affect other people's livelihoods?
I don't feel imposter syndrome. And I hear a lot of women talk about that, especially Black women talk about that, especially. And so I was raised primarily by my mother and father, but my mother really instilled in me that I could do whatever I wanted to do if I put my mind to it. And that shit stuck, And in corporate America, when I was working for Cox and MailChimp, I really excelled in growing teams. And I kind of figured out that was my purpose then. And so when I formed my own company quite by accident, I knew that that's what I was good at. And it's because I really care about people a lot. So I don't feel imposter syndrome about that at all. And that's what's most important to me. Like when I look inside of my company, of course, the things I want to do will not make our external values, but like my mission inside my company is really to empower my team to be as successful as they can be on an individual basis. And I was good at that before, so I know I'm good at it now. So I do feel some sort of imposter syndrome every now and then when I look at my company compared to other companies, but just for a second. Because what I've learned is when you drill down into the underbelly, our problems are the same. Like their payroll problems may have a larger scale, but at the nuts and bolts, we're still trying to balance our finances, right? And so I think I was sharing with you that I was at an event a couple of weeks ago, and I was in the room with Pepsi and Hormel, large brands, right? But then when I heard them talk about their issues, like, well, I can equate that issue to this issue that I'm going through on a much smaller level. And honestly, I'd rather have my problem than your problem right now to figure it out, right?
Yeah, so I've been intentional, not just for today, but just since I joined in 1989. So to answer your question earlier about being a founder, I'm third generation, but I've been the most seasoned senior person, including all forms of my predecessors. Nobody was in the organization as long as I was. But I've been very open in terms of interviews and entrance interviews, exit interviews. But for me, it's lifestyle. I'm not here to, work 40 or more hours a week. I'm here to get this result in 12 months or less.
Right.
Preferably less. Right? If we can do it by Halloween or October, we're great, right? We can, not cruise, but we can do something different, for the balance of the year. So, to your point, we all have the same problems. It's just a matter of how many commas and zeros.
Right.
I mean,
right.
Really,
Exactly.
that's my old CPA who's retired said, bigger problems. It's just more commas and zeros. It's people, process, and systems of technology. We all suffer, sink or swim by one or more of those things.
Yep.
So, so that's one. The other part, in terms of the imposter, is I make it very clear. This is excellence. It's a number, like it's over. It's that line. If we're not there, we're not there, and that means we're not working together. And it's not you, it's not me, it's us. Number one. Number two. There's an author, more of a spiritual, religious. His name is John Maxwell. And he talks about your maximum.
I love him so much.
And one of the things that I've took away from him, I've attended his book signings and all that good stuff, is there's going to be a part of your life that you're 5, you're never going to be a 10.
Mhm.
No matter how hard you read, pray, eat, love, whatever it is, you just not 10's not in your. It's not in there. And from an imposter perspective, it's like I'm going to check that in my marriage. It's like there's just areas after 30 years. I'm just not that man. I'm just not that man. After 30 years, still not him. my doppelganger, my nice twin or evil twin, like just isn't there. So it's hard to, you can't please everybody.
Yeah.
And it's hard to even please yourself as the owner. And you asked not a loaded question, but all the risk, all the reward, but the buck stops and starts with you.
Yep.
All of that, everyone's problems are yours. Everyone's successes are yours.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? That customer who just blew it out is your success. The one who just fired you is also your failure.
Yeah.
And employee and supplier. So for me, it's once you realize we're going to work a good chunk of our life. There's not a get rich quick fix. And even if it is, staying rich is another thing. Getting rich, there's lottery winners that don't keep the money. So you just realize it's a long game. Mm-hmm. And, there's going to be seasons that are better than others in terms of, the better versions of yourself as an organization. But yeah, I don't get too caught up with what other people do. When you ask about kind of like social media and how to get connected, the different handles, I don't wear any handles. Like I'm handle free. Like,
I saw that. Yeah.
I mean, I'm on LinkedIn because I think you have to be. It's almost like, when you're a CEO, especially. Mm-hmm. But even on LinkedIn, I don't really advertise and promote that who I am. Just because you don't want those solicitations. Yeah. People treat you differently when you have titles and stuff. Mm-hmm. So I try to be a little more playful with that, just for my own purpose. But yeah, I live a pretty low diet in terms of distraction. And that's all forms, digital and otherwise. So helps me, be less of a leader or more of a, authentic version of myself. But yeah, these are always, a year from now, we'll have the same Q&A and it'll be like similar, like that didn't go so great.
Yeah.
That went a little better. Or I was surprised. Are you lucky or good? It's hard to know which some days.
You mentioned that you live without distractions, and I mean, I feel like you're lucky you were born in the golden era where, like,
I would not want to be my daughter. I'm just like, I would not. Yes.
So, do you have any advice? Because I mean, I am Gen Z, so life feels like it does. The social media is very tempting, and I will say that it's helped me like build my little itty bitty art freelance business that way, but also again it's distracting sometimes. So do you have how do you keep yourself out of it, or does it feel like you don't have to because you've spent so much time without it already?
So yes and yes. Two-part questions, two-part answers. Number one, yes, it was the golden era. I mean, I'm glad I grew up without that, and I say that because just I don't miss it, which is why, again, Facebook came and I didn't fall for it, but I don't feel like I'm missing out on anything. Mm-hmm. What I do, just from a screen time, just going it more broad, is my phone goes off at 10 o'clock no matter where I am. Mm-hmm. It's not, I'm thinking about it. It's just automatically, and it doesn't kick back on until 7 o'clock unless I override it. Mm-hmm. That's important. I was at the lake this weekend with good friends, and when I go to the lake, there's nothing important on the lake. There's nothing. I'm not missing anything. There's not an opportunity that if I don't do it on Saturday or Sunday, it goes away. I've learned, in terms of the long game, that if it's a real opportunity, it'll be there on Monday. Mm-hmm. Just using a weekend analogy. But the other part, and I think because, being Gen Z, you can do more than one thing at one time. I heard recently, and this is maybe a small plug for a future offering of yours. You were at the park doing art and people were asking how to sign up for it. Mm-hmm. Now you're just doing it with friends and there wasn't a formal structure like for hire and here's my Instagram. Mm-hmm. But the fact is, that's being discovered. You don't always have to push. Sometimes gravity, there can be pull. And it's hard to know what that my daughter, got a job out of school and didn't apply for it because she got recruited because she wasn't pushing. Yeah. She wasn't push and me and promote. So that's, again, I'm just giving you had a success story recently that Adria shared with me. And being discovered, happens when you least expect it. You weren't going out with an agenda that day or, like this has to happen. I have to pay rent, my student loans.
Mm-hmm.
So just letting, paying attention. I kind of gave an earlier quote, which is a very old one from Ralph Waldo Emerson, about having this rigid adherence to consistency.
Mm-hmm.
It limits intellectual growth and individuality. You are one of a kind. No matter what's out there, it is only you to decide how much of you from quantity that you share. You're given 24 hours a day of access, because hackers, pro tip secret, the less of you, the more value of you. There's only so many Babe Ruth baseball cards in the world.
Mm-hmm.
If there was a million of them, they wouldn't be worth as much as there were 10.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at yourself just using that card of you as a trading card, like how many trades, how much access do you grant to the world?
Yeah.
Because when I grant less, I generally get more. That's my experience. And again, that's digital, offline, from a distraction perspective. So it is. It's tricky.
Yeah, but no, what you said reminds me of a book that Mom has been trying to get me to read. I actually started reading it, called The Secret. Right?
Yes.
And there was this concept of like already knowing that you have everything that you need, and when you're in that mindset, you're not just like pushing for things, and knowing that you have it all already. It kind of comes to you that way, and that's what you said kind of reminded me of that.
Definitely part of my journey in terms of childhood and adulthood, and then just realizing grandma was always right.
Yeah.
Right? 90, almost 7. Yep, this is how you live a long life full of love. And again, whether there's 1 can or 2 cans in the pantry, one's all you need.
Yeah.
Can't eat it all at one time in terms of
Right.
life. Just
Yeah.
using that as an analogy. So I applaud anyone who's trying to figure it out in a very. Let's talk about we have attention deficit disorder.
Mm-hmm.
We have plenty of attention. We stream. We can binge a weekend. Right? We can tell you to the number of bronzes how many medals the U.S. has at any given second.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just, where do you put your attention? Where do you apply that? And more importantly, who do you share that with? Who's got your back? Who is part of your journey and your path? What does your off ramp look like? When I get to X millions, X at 40, I want to do this. Literally, like if you set out those milestones of like, I want to go to blank by blank. I want to do X by Y. I want to be debt free by, I was only off on a couple of my big, milestone metrics a few times, but it's better to aim, big and hit lower versus aim low and hit. It's all about your trajectory. So it's you have a lot of love and support in terms of business and family to and you can do more than one thing. If this doesn't work out, try something else. We're always tinkering, as I call it, seeing what works. Hey, this is not so good, but you learn from not mistakes. You learn from all of your lessons.
All of them.
You mentioned that a system that you have in your life is your phone going off at 10 regardless. What are some other systems that you have in your life that set you up for success?
So going to the wellness center, getting out of the house and being active and having your mind, having some form of a faith-based outlet, having fun. I mean, to be fair, looking at my calendar of how many Teams, Zoom, or whatever those onlines are, and it's like, are we having dinner with friends this weekend?
Yeah.
And again, they're picking the whatever, if it's South Carolina versus Georgia, if it's Italian versus Mexican, if it's a show at the Horizon Theater versus the Deadpool, latest. So, I think, you get another, at least my phone gives you like, how much screen time do you have? It's on a number. I don't track my Fitbit, how many calories I burn in a day or week. And there's only so many things you can keep score in life. Otherwise, you just spend the paralysis of analysis. Right? Like, oh, I did this and I didn't do that, and I feel great. I feel horrible. It's like you just have to kind of, there's a phrase that I kind of hold on to. It's keep what's worth keeping with a breath of kindness, gently blow the rest away. Now, whether that's business or non-business, financial, for me, it's like if it's worth keeping, hold on to it. And as a habit or at whatever that might be, it's like, hey, if this app is really feeding you or keeping you connected with community, love on it. But love on it with maybe some time constraints or some some parameters there. So This has been fun.
Oh, it's so good. Okay, I just want you to just roll through because there were some events that you wanted to shout out. I don't know if you have the list in front of you, but if not, I'll call them out and just tell me a quick blurb on what each of them are.
Yeah, so coming up, there's the Build Southeast, which is all about the B Corp community here in the Southeast. What's exciting about that is it's hosted here in Atlanta in September. Last year was the first ever, and the South, just across all social, environmental, is later to the dance, and that's the startups, the business, the representation of businesses of all colors, all sizes and shapes. So this has been kind of a patient group's dream to have, all the Southeast represented, number one, but there to be just, more representation from inequality. We're, again, late to the dance in many ways, and it feels like a good place to be. I went this past spring to Momentum Summit, which takes place in Asheville. I think for Adria, it's an incredible place to meet like-minded, high impact people that are, playing the game at a very high level. So this is maybe a good, not segue, but maybe endpoint. Are you a business with no vision or product with no vision? Are you a product that has vision, or you have vision that has a product or service? So on a scale of 1 to 10, like 0 is like, yeah, I'm in business, but I don't really have a vision or values or whatever that might be. But is it because I'm in business that I have a vision, or is it I have a vision and therefore I'm in business? So I'm in that transition personally, and looking at organizations that are structured, impact first, family first, versus like optional, like if we have extra money, if we have extra time, then we can do the right thing.
Right.
So that's, I think, in terms of events, always plug the free in the community. So, check your local library. There's always things that are family friendly, book signings, all that good stuff. The Atlanta Symphony Orchestra is doing an event for free in the park coming up. I like free.
That's great.
Big on free. But just again, those community, get-togethers, I think, are special. Some of the, I guess, digital products that I wanted to leave you with, I have a handful. Mentioned earlier about Purpose and Expenses. There's a website by that same name that I'm, getting cozy with and excited about, because there's some immediate impact that you can do with everyday expenses, with things that you can't run your business without. So that's one that I, will provide for the, audience. Hoopla Digital is an extension of the local libraries.
Okay.
You can get audiobooks and e-readers and all the other good stuff, movies, and that's great, for anybody, not living on a budget, just who wants something that isn't on Hulu, Netflix, Amazon Prime, Apple TV, right? Very big on Georgia Public Broadcasting. I put my money where my mouth is there, as does the company. So I very much encourage people to get involved with their activities and events, and that's an ongoing opportunity. Skyscanner, back to your travel questions earlier. A good friend of mine does more international travel. And there's some carriers that you can't, Delta doesn't fly everywhere, sadly, for me in Atlanta. So how do I get from point A to point B where Delta doesn't service? And that's been a great way to discover routes and getting around a little more safely, lower impact, just in terms of like reducing the amount of connections and stuff. So that's a fun resource. And when I travel, another way I like to, I guess, this isn't so much impact as it is just being part of something that is important. We all have pride where we are in different, but Atlas Obscura are things that are kind of like off the beaten path places. And we've had some real fun discoveries around the world and seeing places that just aren't like ticketed items and, everybody's doing in terms of selfies and, all that good stuff. So realizing that there's places in the world that, are kind of off the beaten path, but worth celebrating and having fellowship with people that see some benefit in it. And the last thing, I love music, so one of my distraction, noise cancelers is I have music on pretty much when I'm working. Just about, I don't not know when I don't have music. And that's its own calming, centering, whatever you want to call it. Only one voice in my head. They're much better than my head, right? I don't want to hear myself talk. So WYEP is a radio station out of Pittsburgh, where I'm from, and they do a great streaming. And I've discovered more global music in terms of not just local pop, etc. So I always like to shout out community radio, public media, wherever that is. In this case, growing up in Pittsburgh, I think we have one of the better ones for again that discovery and just it's a different way to experience. I mean, I'm learning Aretha Franklin songs well after she's been gone. And that's pretty cool, right? In terms of the A-side, B-sides, that's the finals back home for kids that are, still out there waiting to be discovered. So fun stuff. Well, thank you for today. This was a lot of fun. I'm glad we got to do this.
It was so great.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Thank you for listening to Entrepreneurs with Heart. If you're watching on YouTube, drop a comment below and let us know what your takeaway was. Or if you're listening, take a screenshot and share it on social media with your takeaway. If you would like to leave us a review, head over to your favorite podcast app and give us a 5-star rating. This will help us reach more small business owners like yourself, and your feedback helps others find our show.